FourthBrain, and we're extremely pleased to be here with Mohamed Elgendy, who most recently was the VP of AI at Rakuten and now working on this new venture that we'll be hearing more about. And I also wanted to say thank you to our partners over at Essentials, who publish the AI weekly newsletter that reaches 120,000 subscribers. And so this informational session is going to be focused on AI and ML for that audience. So Mohamed, thank you very much for being with us and for being such a great friend.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you and I go back quite a while, and you've spoken to our students or candidates at FourthBrain recently, so we really appreciated that. Your journey has been very interesting. It's almost like a jungle gym path, if you will, right? Filled with micro-credentials, engineering, software engineering, ML, AI. I think this is your second company, you want to say, that your venture you're working on, writing books, right? So I would love to hear a little bit about what got you into ML, starting from software engineering, what got you interested, and what were the first kind of breakthroughs or steps that you took to break into the space?
Yeah, absolutely. You described it very well. I mean, my journey has been like in a jungle kind of way in terms of it was not planned. You learn after maybe 5 years or 10 years, however long it is. When you look back, you feel like, okay, things might be falling in places, because as long as you believe that you just start doing as much as you can, you have passion towards something, like let's say something is technology, like as big as whatever it is, right? So that is good enough if you're starting a career. If you have passion towards something that is big and then you don't know what it is, get a job with whatever skill sets you have, and then make sure that in the afternoon or your personal time in the weekends, you are following this passion. Even if you don't have a passion, then get a job and then try to find the passion, try to do a lot of side projects, but with discipline of having the second day, if you will, right? Working on different projects until you find a passion, and then you start narrowing in. So that has been my case. I am an engineer. I studied biomedical engineering in school, building medical equipment, and we studied the software and the hardware side. So I had an overall idea what technology is, and I was so excited about it. Started working a few years as a software engineer, and I took the regular track of senior engineer, and then senior lead, and then manager, and so on. The fast forward to probably, so I've been a manager for a few years. Let's say after 5 years in my career, I switched into a manager track, and then I decided I'm obviously keeping track of keeping an eye on everything. And then at some point, if I remember correctly, the first Udacity's nano degree was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and the first ML nano degree specifically, or it was AI at the time. And then that was at the time where the whole MOOCs, which is online, open online courses, the whole movement started really big with Udacity and Coursera, or with NRank's course, and Udemy, right? So when the wave happened, and then there have been several tracks in technology that, okay, this is the new trend. That has been software engineering, and then web development, and then iOS, and then at the time it was AI and VR, right? And at the time, okay, I don't really know. Honestly, this is, how naive the plan was, or how it's a jungle. I did apply for both, right? It's just both are cool. I have no idea. I looked at them, and both are really cool. I applied for both. I got accepted in the AI, I didn't get accepted. So initially, you had this, especially the first nano degrees, they had this selection criteria, and I don't know if it's a closed beta users or something, but they had the selection process, and it was the first nano degrees. So I just applied for both, right? I really didn't know. I did my homework. Both are cool. I have no idea what is best for the career or what I would like more. But with the same attitude is just apply, and then the door opens somewhere, and then you put your head in and get inside. You like it, you continue. Other doors will open. You don't like it, iterate and come back. So that was the attitude, really. To get back to the question, so I did the AI nano degree. At the time, I remember I was working at Twilio, and then I decided, okay, let's say some AI, you have it, which is, I'm sure you will talk about it at some point, but it sets you up to a certain level, which is really good to get an idea, and then you get to understand what are the other doors that you want to dive deep into, or where do you want to specialize. So at the time, we were working on text problems. I decided to just read every book on NLP and it's called the library NLTK, Natural Language Toolkit, I guess. And then different. Like I dived as deep as I want and as I can in text problems, and then I after that I wasn't super excited about it, and there was other voice and computer vision, and then I decided computer vision, and then the journey came. But the whole point of how to get there, it's really just keeping an eye. Do this by discipline. If we have a day job and then the afternoon, a job, and then you just keep learning as you go until today. I'm always working on side projects, and then what happened, just to the closing note of a very long answer, that what happened is I noticed when I look back in the past journey in my career, it's always happening that I have a day job, and then in the afternoon, whatever I'm studying now ends up being my day job the next year. And then this has been a fire. And when I noticed that, I started, implementing that a little bit more intelligently.
That's fascinating. I think you touched upon some very important features of how learning, especially in this space, has progressed, right? So if you look back kind of the 5-6 years ago, or when machine learning started to become more in the applied category and not just an academic research path. And you sort of did this, whether it's through micro-credentials, learning as you go, trying different things out, and the whole like passion versus day job. So what's been your observation in terms of whether it's these micro-credentials or learning on your own? Because I think the other part you touched upon that's so important is trying things out just to figure out whether you like it or not. So I used to tell college students when I worked in that field that if you do an internship, for example, and you don't like it, that's okay. That's 3 months of deciding whether you want to do this or not versus going into a job and realizing this field isn't for you. So if you can expand a little bit more on that trial and error method, and it's easier to be done when it's like when the learning also happens in chunks and you're not committed to a very long program, and how you've seen that learning path evolve, especially within machine learning. Because clearly you're a fan and you advocate for it. But yeah, I would love to hear more around this like modular, bite-sized, smaller pieces of learning, because it informs the next step, and how you see that happening, evolving more within machine learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's exactly like you said. It's trial and error, especially to find your passion, because the passion is not like something that. The whole point is, if you want like the big, like the bigger goal is, I believe in the 10,000 hours rule. Like you to master something, you have had spent the 10,000 hours working on it, and then if you do the math, 10,000 hours is approximately 5 years of a full-time job. If I do the math correctly, I don't remember if that's correctly, but the point here is, it's few hours of a full-time job. So I have like this discipline of having the day job, which is the 8 hours a day, and then I make sure that I'm at my desk 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours in a good day every day after my day job. So now you kind of have a half of a job. So whatever, like in a year, you have achieved a year and a half of what everybody else achieved. And it's not like a workaholic recipe or anything. You don't have to do it. But the point is really that allows you, if you have the discipline of I am at my desk, whatever, from this time to time, it's just for my personal projects, not for my day job, then you have the time and you're not stressed out that to think in a longer term chunks. Instead of thinking, this is the biggest challenge of people who are jumping into ML or AI or any other discipline, and that they back out when they with the first roadblock, is they are expecting, okay, I'm gonna test it out for a week or two, and it's hard. If it's hard, if it's not exciting, I'm gonna leave. But you still usually the honeymoon phase is the first few weeks of anything, and then you have to face some roadblocks. So I did that. I tried a lot of stuff. Like I tried even I tried to become a product manager. I tried to become a project manager. Like I didn't have a plan that I want to be like a machine learning engineering manager track. I was just trying things out because you don't know really. And then I had the same thing. You're trying, and then you're trying to get the stamps of approval from the bigger companies or the bigger schools, because we're all trying to find the right opportunity. So that's fair. Like you're back to the micro degrees that you mentioned, micro credentials. That's the same thing. Like people always thinking, should I get a master's in something, or like a AI, or should I do an end degree is enough, or should I do a course or a book? And then you really don't know. Like it's still tempting to say I have a master's in something. Yes, it might set you up in a good way for a job. So there's no right answer as well for that. So the only right answer really here is test things out in smaller chunks. That's how I do it. And then smaller chunks are like really like cannot be so small. Like if it's a Udemy course, for example, usually it's like 20 hours or so. Take the whole thing and finish it, right? And then close the loop always with something outside for people to see. For me, it has been some educational content, whether it's a blog or later a book or some YouTube videos. So just close the loop with something that's out or a product, right? This way that you can actually see the full cycle of things, go through the full cycle quickly, and then see things. That has been my case, like small chunks and then push something out when you're done and then iterate.
Right, that's so true. It's like a demonstrable project or showcasing something that you're working to. It's a deliverable, really. That's what helps.
Yes.
And in the online world, you're absolutely right. It's so easy to quit when the bite size is too small of a bite, and you want to be able to actually be retained in the product and to get at least enough of an experience to decide whether it's for you or not.
Sure.
And so much of this is self-awareness. I think that's something you touched upon, which is true for entrepreneurs in general and folks who are in the engineering space, is understanding your own learning path, what motivates you, like how disciplined you are. I'm sure there was a trial and error method there too, and coming up with the 2 to 4 hours after work, right? And it works differently for different people. So I think that's a very important part. So another thing you mentioned that I think is interesting here as well is you use books. So there are some theoretical or academic components to this, and there's of course like learning by doing. And so at FourthBrain, we do this quite a bit. It's a project-based learning program, as you know, and it's a hybrid program. So we focus on there's some stuff that's flexible online you can do on your own, and then there's live sessions where you work with peers and you collaborate, and again, it's working on a deliverable. How have you found that balance between how much of the theoretical books you're reading, or anything really that's academic you're reading, versus how much of the applied part that you have to do in order to get to the full learning experience?
Yeah. So again, that's a really, really good question, because it's hard to ask this question when you're at the beginning. What am I going to do? I'm going to focus on the theoretical research. I'm going to focus on the applied. But what I tend to do is just and that's what I did in any new topic. I just read everything, just a very quick scan. Let's say that the first cycle is very quick, that you just understand what all the components are, understand the differences, right? Like what does it mean to read the theoretical part or the applied part, or what is the output that I'm looking for? So you just go through, like, let's say a month, right, of just understanding the full cycle, the landscape. And then after that, this is when you get to see, okay, if I want to become a researcher, then probably I want to dive deep a little bit in this area. If I want to become a machine learning engineer or build something, I want to focus in these areas. So you start understanding what it means to do what, to read what, or so on. And then you kind of have like some kind of skeleton in your head or curriculum in your head, not necessarily of the next door, which is, okay, I'm going to dive deep in research or dive deep in applied. But you got to understand what you want to do. And then that can be wrong. That's fine. Just go fast. Like I usually go fast, and then I don't leave between a stage and another. I go through it very quickly and make a decision what the next step is, and then I close it. I don't finish it. I don't question it until I finish it. So if you do small iterations and then question it, don't question it until the end. So fast forward now, you have you've taken there's abundance of information out there and resources. You've taken a course, whether with FourthBrain or read a book or something. Any start is fine, really, at this point. You can look at, okay, do I want to read more about research? Then you have a different route, and could be school even. Like, I don't know really at this point. Or I want to I want to apply stuff. Then you want to apply. What do you want to apply? Is it, again, the bigger branches are computer vision, text data, or voice data. And then you start getting excited about things, and then diving a little deeper to just, I don't want to say like the cliche word of follow your passion, but do something you're excited about, because at the end of the day, you're probably not getting paid for it. So that's the thing. The whole point of doing something on your side time is you're not getting paid for it. But if you got the chance to get paid by anything, do it. Even if it's not your passion. The reason here is like, it just creates something else. So let's say you studied something. I know your question, I didn't lose track of it, like what to read, like how do you know read? But it's actually, it's always driven by me. For me, it's driven by the final result. Like if I finished the first course and I got somebody to pay me to speak here, right? I will just do that. Then that's it. So I follow projects, really, then follow things. And then after 2 or 3 years, or whatever long, but like a longer cycle, you'll find that you have done a lot, and then you know exactly what you want to focus on. That's basically the high level thought process. If you want to dive deep into I'm sure you have thoughts on what to read and if you want to focus on that. But basically, it's
absolutely.
I follow the project.
Mm-hmm. Right, and you're right. Like if you're not getting paid for it, you might as well enjoy it first. Right, so that's important too. Yeah. Another kind of question around these learning processes. So there's a lot of self-learning that happens, and there's so much good quality content out there. Like we're lucky in the era and the age that we live in that all of this is at our fingertips, and we decide whether we want it free or low cost or high cost, depending on what the value delivered is. What are some pros and cons that you kind of see when it's, especially in this path, right? Like in engineering, AI, ML, self-learning is fairly easy to get into, but then there's also the part where collaborative learning, because when you're in an actual job and you're partnering with people, and we see this quite a bit at FourthBrain too, where we emphasize communication skills, collaboration skills, because we see that something or community which is hard to get in a self-learning online kind of space. So having gone through several of these types of programs, what are some pros and cons you see in self-learning that you want to watch out for? And then what are some pros and cons you see, or have you sought out specific types of programs or pathways because you wanted to get to whether it's collaborative work or work that mimics the workspace?
Yeah. You said it really well that we are in a great era of you really can learn anything. And I have I started like everybody else. A degree is important, and then but that was a long time ago. But because I feel like I was a very, very early adopter of online education, and then I think at this point I feel like a really self-learning is really, really good, and you can, even if you want however level of self-learning, right, from super self-learning all on your own, and then probably you get a job, or self-learning and then you read something and then you join a program like FourthBrain or other dev boot camps and then do another thing. But at the end of the day, you have to have self-learning regardless of you're at school or thing. You have to self-learn everything because everything is evolving very fast and nothing can cover everything for you. So if you're, the pros and cons of self-learning is the skill of being able to learn by yourself. That's the biggest pro of it, because if you end up getting into the best school, and they have to teach you that obviously, but again, if you don't know after you graduate, and then you don't know how to after 2 or 3 years, if you don't keep up, then you're kind of obsolete at this point, especially if you're working on very high-paced technology like AI and others. So there's no way around self-learning. The whole point is how do you get there, right? That obviously the hardest thing about self-learning is the discipline, right? If you don't have the discipline to stay, because nothing brings you back, right? All kinds of programs on sure Salwa, you know that even more than me, that all these programs in Coursera, Udacity, and all these guys, they have whatever sign-up rate is, whatever, let's say this number, and then maybe 20% finish up. I'm sure it's I'm just being nice to these programs, but I'm sure the numbers are super, super low. Like the sign-up is so easy, right? You just sign up, especially for free content even.
And the quitting is so easy too. You just have to turn your computer off.
Just don't sign up again. Exactly, yeah, don't sign up again. So it's always like people always go to the gym, but they don't come back to the gym, right? That's the whole thing. It's just if you have to work on your discipline and to actually doing something. That's why the whole thing is follow your passion kind of thing, because you're passionate towards that. You can be passionate towards the goal, by the way. You don't have to be passionate about what ML is. But if you're passionate about ML, it's going to give you a big job and a lot of money. That's fair, right? So just find the reason that brings you back. And it's better if you already have the discipline of, have some time that you're always doing something, even if you're just staring at the screen. And there's no real, at this point, if you have that, there's anything works. Like as long as you're going to go to school, that's the highest level of maybe the least of self-learning, and then or programs in between the boot camps or FourthBrain or completely self-learning, you can mix and match at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to compare some of these online programs with ones that have more accountability built in. Like it's the difference between having a gym membership and a trainer. I know I'm guilty of it. If I have to go tell my trainer I'm not going to show up, I feel embarrassed and I'll go. But if it's a membership, no one's tracking it. So
nobody's tracking it. No, that's very true. I've talked to some founders in the edtech space, and then they were saying that they intentionally have high cost of the program just to make sure that people have the discipline to come back because they invested a lot. So even if it doesn't have to be an economic reason, but the discipline is the hardest thing. People are busy in general, and tons of stuff that's affecting people in life.
Right. It's about having skin in the game, right? Like if you're putting
Yes,
your own
absolutely.
money into it or time into it, whatever that investment may be, there's a level of vetting that to decide whether this is worth my time and investment before you
Absolutely.
commit versus trying a lot of different things and then dropping off most of it. So
Absolutely.
that makes
That's
makes
why
a lot of sense.
one thing that worked well with me is plan a project at the end of a program or studying or something that you like. I'm dreaming through whole program to share something with people on whatever my community somewhere or get paid something. So that can kind of keep you if you work in project based like you guys are doing at FourthBrain. I think, but in your life, right? That I think will keep you going through the struggles because obviously nothing good is easy, right? So.
Yeah, we're going to circle back to that project idea, but I'm also curious. This obviously, as you were kind of going through this learning and working at various types of companies too. You've been at large companies, at Toy and Amazon. You've been at mid-sized companies, and now you're starting your own venture with Kolina, or your second venture. So tell us a little bit about how you got to that stage where you were like, "There's enough out there. I actually want to do something and make an impact," and how you came up with this idea and what Kolina will be doing.
Yeah, I mean, initially the first venture, I joined the guys who were working on something. I came to my so I figured that different motivations, right? So that was the first one, maybe like what 3 years ago. I was at Amazon and I decided I wanted to have a different lifestyle, right? I want to have different goals, different challenges. So what I'm working on, and I want to learn. Like I want to express my personal growth in a different way. So I just kept an eye on what startups are doing, and then having conversations with either as a technical co-founder, very early stage employee, like whatever it is, right? And then I landed on Synapse, computer vision startup in Palo Alto, and then that took that track. Now it's different. Like I have different motivation. It's basically I'm looking at different. I look at my career in the past 4 or 5 years. Every time I join a job, I have to solve the same problems several times, and it was very clear in my last job. At Rakuten. So I had a higher position, kind of like managerial job. I was a VP of Eng. So I get pitched a lot tools that are in the industry and to build your ML workflow or to stitch the phases together or solve specific problems. And I just found that I still don't have what I'm looking for. I don't see out there something that is solving a problem that I've been having in the past, let's say 4 jobs, so it's like 6, 7, 8 years. So I decided, okay, this is a good opportunity. First of all, it's again to be completely transparent. It's not like okay, let's go change the world. It's more like okay, it's a good opportunity. It's a problem that everybody has. I've been having it a lot, and I have to do it again. I have a team that we have solved this problem. We have worked together in 3 or 4 jobs, and then we have solved it very well. So let's go out and bring this ML tech from the tech giants who have the resources to build this infrastructure for themselves to smaller startups and smaller teams, and then individuals eventually. So that was the motivation the second time.
Yes. Yeah, that's very interesting. I was going to actually ask you about this, but was Kolina like a project you worked at towards the end, or were these projects that you mentioned, right? Like having the deliverable in your mind that kind of anchors your learning experience. Do you have some tips for folks? Because people do want to work on projects. It comes down to how do I narrow it down? Where do I get the ideas, right? Like who do I work with? So having done many of these, do you have tips for folks who are going through the learning experience to come up with project ideas to be passionate about?
I don't really have tips. I can share what my thought process because I don't know if this mind is generalizable, right? Because the project, even the definition of a project is really different from the goal, right? Some projects like I'm reading this book, but I'm reading it for that goal. And I want to define any project that keeps me going. So that's why, so you just think about any project or something, even the project it doesn't have to be a product that you build. It could be a post on your like a blog or something. So since I had this mentality all the time, like whatever I do, it has to end with something that goes out to people for people to see. And that was the reason, by the way, I got almost all my jobs is something that you work on it and then others see it and it generates other conversations. Kolina specifically, it was generated by it's in the ML infrastructure space, and I have always been in the ML product, so I'm building. But it has always, when you get get to starting building AI product, you assume that you're going to start from zero, from the point zero, so you can build. But usually, I find myself starting from point minus one, which is you want to set up what you need to build. So I built it from like we started with a very cool project like on my computer and something, and I was at Amazon at the time. So I built some kind of workflow from end to end just to make sure that the whole point of the biggest reason that ML projects are very expensive, other than the compute, is it takes too long to finish from end. And then research shows that Gartner posted something last year that it takes around 6 to 9 months in enterprises to finish a project from end to end, and that was crazy, not realistic for me. So I was at Amazon at the time when I created that flow, just stitched something together, and it worked very well. And then, but at the time I was founding the computer vision think tank, so I wasn't focusing on that, so I kept it. And then I when I joined the startup, it's one of these like long like lifelong projects I've been working on. And then when I joined an AI startup, it was a startup, so it's like nothing out there. And then I looked at tools. I don't trust my development is in something that is scalable. It's just a school project. And then I decided, okay, there's nothing out there that solves this problem. So I got to my point, and I worked with my team at the startup to actually make it better. I went to Rakuten. I was VP of Eng. I had much more resources. So forget about this project, but I have the learnings, and I built it with bigger resources. And now it's the time to actually like let's look at the business side of it. So building a company is something that happened later in the stages when I saw that that I've been this has been itching me for years. The industry seems from the outside that it's crowded, but from the inside, when you're in like the ML tooling, it seems crowded because probably there's 100, 200 companies solving pieces here and there. But when you're inside, you see the problem that this is not solved yet. And I noticed the one thing that triggered the okay, let's kick this off. I noticed that the big guys, Amazon, Google, they started noticing that, and they built product for it. Like SageMaker went out. I have my reservations on SageMaker, but it's a initial good solution of that. So SageMaker was released maybe a year and a half ago, and then others starting to release. Google Collab started charging $10. Like they have the free version, and so everybody started noticing this, and that's why I felt like there's a real business value here. Let's actually get people and work on it.
So when you're building teams, whether it was at Rakuten or even with Kolina or people you're surrounding yourself with that may not necessarily be hiring involved, but in the space of ML and AI, what are some, I guess, qualities or things you look for? Because I feel like this is also another one of those self-awareness things, right? Like you're getting to in terms of what would work. Like what are some qualifications or qualities that you look for?
So aside from the technical stuff, because I don't know if your question is asking about machine learning engineers specifically, or maybe that's a follow-up question, but like personal traits that I look for is the acceleration, really, like acceleration of growth, acceleration of how you do things, because that's the biggest part. Usually, especially in machine learning engineering, like in a new field in any way, there are ways people on the other side being interviewing you, they are looking for any data points to make a decision. So that's the whole merit of the process. Like the other side is looking for some data points or some signals. So when it's a new field, it's hard to say I want somebody who has been working for 20 years as machine learning, or even 5 years as a machine learning engineer. It's good enough. But these number of years are not available now. So you start thinking, okay, then the long experience is not enough. So what other signals? And the important signal is, okay, so this is a new technology, evolves fast, then these people have to be fast learners, right? And fast learners doesn't mean very super smart. You can be the slowest. You acquire information very slowly, but you spend long hours to compensate for that. So you end up being in a week have learned more. So that's the whole point. So fast learners, self-starters, because I'm talking especially for a new field that's being so. And the reason, like some are cliches, like fast learners are self-starters, but I'm trying to explain why that is. Because you have self-starter because we're building a project. You're my team, but I'm not expecting necessarily that I know everything, especially for a new field. So you have to tell me what are the best tools that you want to use, what's the best technology, and so on. So that's the reason you have to you take initiative and so on. And there are ways to test for that. That's easy to test for it. But basically, I want to see what you've done in the past few years what you've worked on, and I try to look for acceleration and these data points that show that self-starter and so on.
Yeah, I'm with you on the self-starter piece. I mean, regardless of any role I've ever hired for, technical or non-technical, I have like three philosophies, and the number one is are people who take initiative. Because in reality, and this is even more important for an emerging field, as you mentioned, you don't necessarily want to be micromanaged or be the person that's micromanaging. At the same time, there's always going to be challenges and problems to be solved in any role, any job, any company. And so folks who identify that come up with a proposed solution. That's always a skill set, right? Regardless of whether it's technical or not technical. No, I think you answered that perfectly. I was looking for regardless of, because depending on the role, I think the technical piece of that answer changes, right? Like what qualifications you're looking for. But in terms of surrounding yourself with, whether it's a small team, a new team, some of these qualifications are applicable across. I guess if we dig a little bit deeper into the qualifications within ML and AI, I mean, you touched upon some of the things that you do when you're learning. So I suspect that's what you look for when folks, when you're hiring too. But is there a tendency, or I don't want to say like, I guess a preference to some degree, where you evaluate whether it's people who put out those deliverables, like the blogs you're learning that you look for, or is there some other way you evaluate the technical skills? Because do you have a preferred way?
The technical skills are, I think, easier to measure because they're very quantitative. But you mentioned something very important that's in the personal trait, which is put out their work. Put out their work is a signal for me that this person doesn't have the ego, right? That they are fine putting their work out and people hating on it and getting bad comments and everywhere. And then even if they have high ego and they did it, they have gotten scarred enough, so they actually have been humbled, which is it just ruins the person's career and the rest of the team. So it's a good point for that. The technical skills. Again, this is a overgeneralized answer because there are definitely different applications, but you usually look at buckets, right, of things. Depends the weight of each bucket depends on what you're hiring for. But you need to have somebody who can do a little bit of programming, some software engineering, understand the object-oriented programming concepts, understand functions, building classes, like these basic concepts of how to just build some software engineering code base. So that's number one. That's a bucket of however high I know. Another bucket is the MLPs, right? And they're all technical interviews, so they are measurable. So the MLPs here, again, depends on what application you're working on, how deep you want them to be across the whole workflow or in a specific piece. Because the workflow within ML, is it data specific, or are you talking about images? So you're not necessarily now talking machine learning only. It's just a little bit image processing and so on. Is it audio? So there's other like the ML skill set that you look at, and then there is the what else? The data bucket. So this basically could be so these are the three buckets. It depends here. How far, like what are we doing? And then we start looking into this. I did not say the math bucket intentionally. So I know probably you want to ask about it, but there's no math bucket really for machine learning engineer roles, except you're hiring for an R&D role.
Interesting. Yeah, we hear different perspectives on the math bucket. And I have to say, like in my experience, it varies significantly between the academic side and the applied science side on how people weigh how important the math bucket is. So I'm surprised to hear you say that. So one last question from me. Having been in this space, and this is a field because it's growing, it's one of those things where I think if we were to ask, how long does it take to cover things in this space going from non-technical all the way up, it's probably a few years. But if we ask the same question a year from now, it's probably going to be more expanded because there are specializations that are getting added. Like right now, we have fields in computer vision, NLP. I'm sure there'll be more as we kind of expand. Any trends or thoughts around how you see this field expanding in the coming years, whether it's in automation or how easier it will be for folks to enter? Because I should couch my question by saying this a little bit for context. When it first started, or a few years ago, folks in machine learning were primarily folks with completed PhDs. Right now, we've seen the landscape change significantly. So in terms of that, like, do you see trends or expectations of how this field's gonna change or grow even more or evolve in the next few years?
Yeah, I think my best guesstimate is exactly like looking at the other waves, right? Like the other software engineering wave, same thing happened, and the web development, and then the mobile development, and now we're at the stage of we have a few waves of happening, like the crypto, AI, and VR. And then if you look at the waves, they are accelerating. So there was a big wave up to the public or the masses of software engineering. It was maybe like 15, 20 years of length, and then it's really accelerating thanks to all the efforts that the FourthBrain and others are doing in this and online education. The only challenge, so that's the like okay. So the guesstimate is okay. It has to go. It has to go to it. ML now is being heavily adopted by the tech giants. The AI startups are running after them. They are better than other organizations, and then the rest of organizations are, especially old tech or non-tech. They are feeling the FOMO. They're trying to inject here and there. It's not really structured and organized. And then the fourth bucket of people is individuals, right? Am I a single engineer or two engineers? Can we do something with it alone? Now, if we follow the same wave, then the same thing. We got to the phase where tech giants and startups are doing well, or at least are able to solve their problems because they're attracting the best talent and they have the resources for it. The FOMO, all the organizations are still waiting, and then I don't see blocker for them to adopt it heavily. It's just about time. I'm expecting maybe 2 to 5 years to see actually a big spike. The only challenge of that I'm seeing that this wave reaches the individuals is it economically feasible for these individuals? Meaning that there are tons of efforts to democratize the algorithms. It's available, open source, you can do that. So there are no blockers here. There's a lot of efforts to democratize the infrastructure. So there shouldn't be problems here. The only problem here is if I'm an individual solo engineer, right, I want to do something, can I freelance my ML engineering? Can I build something on my own? Now you have the cost of acquiring this data and then managing the data, and then what are you going to do? Because if you're doing it for yourself, then you probably are a startup. But if you're doing it for a customer, would the customer give you the data, right? So the whole thing is like I'm investigating this piece now. Like, how possible is this wave to go to the individual people to actually now? If once the wave comes to the individuals, now it's on a mass scale at this point because all the blockers are there. So what's the possibility of it getting to them, and what's the acceleration? How fast? How soon can this happen? Is there a big blocker? Are there parameters that industry, whatever, makers like us companies, we can help with this, whether education from your end or infra from my end or algorithms? Are there parameters that help with the economics of making this feasible or even good for individuals? My intuition has to be, because why not? But I'm trying to investigate that piece now. But it's all about the possibilities. Usually yes, but it's just how long it's going to take.
Right. Yeah, no, you said something really important at the beginning, and I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this as well, is when computer science, especially in the 90s, right, as it was booming as a field with companies coming in, are we going to see analogies or kind of mirror reflections of how that progressed? Because there are certain things that worked, certain things that didn't. And can you make predictions of what's going to happen with ML AI now, or is it going to be very different because of learning? And it's hard to predict, but I definitely studied that quite a bit to understand, especially from the education side of things, how that will progress. Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Mohamed, for your comments and insights and sharing your journey. It's always fascinating. And I hope our viewers enjoyed this session. Thank you for watching. And in Mohamed's words, we encourage all of you to continue learning and pursue your passions.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.